What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome to episode 118 of the Rise to Glory here at Gibraltar Apex, and today I have for you guys the start of Season 17. We will be starting today with a game against Porto. It's the opening game of the Champions League group stage, and yeah, it's the start of another year, and this, I believe, I say this now, I might be wrong, I'm pretty sure this is the case, it's the first year ever since we went pro, or at least in the last kind of 5 or 6 years, where we don't have a single player in on loan in our squad. You will note some new names here. Let's go over to the transfers, but before I do that, just a reminder, the last episode was the end of Season 16 episode, and if you didn't watch it, I did a lot more detail and put a lot more effort, I think, into the actual episode itself, and I'd really appreciate if you go and watch it. You'll learn a lot about the tactical system that I'm using in this save, specifically the 4-4-2. I talk a little bit about the squad, some stats, comparing how the league is developing as a whole, the Primera Division, and if I might say so myself, I think it was one of the best episodes I've done in this series so far. Anyway, as you can see, on the ins and outs, lots of money spent and lots of money recouped. But how did we recoup that money? Let's start with the outs. Now, you notice there's a lot of loans here and a few free transfers. In terms of loans, nothing too crazy here. Perhaps the most notable being Jason Mesa, who is out on loan at Gibraltar Lions. The young Colombian joined us last year. He actually already has a cap already for Colombia, but I feel like he's going to benefit from playing regular first-team football. I'm hoping he's going to get that at Gibraltar Lions. You can see he's played in the Champions League and Europa League for them. And if we just look at Gibraltar Lions real quick, you'll see that this year they didn't get to the Champions League group stage, but they have made it to the Europa League group stage. So that's a really good achievement themselves. It's kind of funny, really, because they were playing Celtic in the Champions League Best Place qualifier, and they lost 6-1 on aggregate. They then won the Europa League playoff to get into the group stage, and they got put in a group with Celtic. Now, so that means they're going to play Celtic 2 more times. So they're going to play Celtic 4 times in the same European kind of season, which is a little bit odd to play them in the Champions League and Europa League. But the other thing is, they played them last year in the Champions League group stage. So, I mean, we have Benfica, and it seems like Gibraltar Lions have Celtic as a team that they always seem to be drawn against. Either way, let's get back to the transfers. Jason Mesa, though, the biggest of the loanees going out. There are a few players who went out on frees, players like Joel Begay, a player who's been at the club a while, but ultimately just, he doesn't play enough first-team football for us. You'll see he is now eligible to play. Oh, what? He's not eligible to play for Gibraltar. Is that because he moved away from Gibraltar? Oh, that's a shame. I guess he's relocated back to America. He was eligible to play for Gibraltar. That said, to be fair, the centre-mid position, a very strong position for Gibraltar. Another player left to Tino. A player we brought in a few years ago, and I don't know, £2 million paid to him, but he just never really did a lot for us. You know, £2 million, he was a bit of a punt at the time. Perhaps a player would develop, but at 22, he simply didn't do that. And I feel like in this save, we've had a lot of players who have come really good for us. But equally, there's a lot of players who I perhaps don't acknowledge so much as just not really making it for us. And Tino is certainly one of those players who just never really lived up to the billing. Either way, let's look at the more significance on the outs. And the big one here is Nick Austin going to Hamilton Academical for £17.25 million. Now, the first thing to note is the fact that Hamilton last year finished second from bottom in the Scottish Premiership. That said, if we look at their landmarks here, they got taken over by a tycoon about, well, a year and a bit ago. So they have money to spend. And Sam Chettelberg, he decided that the player that they were going to sign and splooge most of their money on, you can see they spent £25 million, but the player who was going to make the biggest difference for them was going to be Nick Austin. Now, this is a guy who, he had a really good year last year for us. And I mentioned at the end of last episode, or at some point in the last episode, that he was a player who I was certainly contemplating selling. With the emergence of a lot of our good strikers, as much as Nick Austin is a very good player, I felt like he was the weakest of, say, our best 5 strikers, and if I could get some money for him, I'd let him go. He's not a £17 million player, at least not in my opinion. So to get that is pretty pleasing. You can see he's already got injured at Hamilton. A little bit sad to see him go, I guess, but at the same time, it's £17 million. You know, I'm not going to complain too much right here. Why have half my transfers screwed up? This is it's the Hamilton transfers, Jack. I was well confused then for a second. Right, here we go. Onto the other players on the outs just real quick. Rodrigo Romero left us to go to Hoffenheim. The Argentine joined us for a little bit less than 5 million. You can see he joined us for 4.5. So we made £3 million profit on him. He's a very, very good centre-back, but he only had 1 year left of his contract and was looking like he was going to move on. He didn't want to sign a new deal. So to get £7 million for a player with 12 months left on his contract who we were going to potentially lose on a free, I feel like that's a good bit of money. And there's another player who was, I guess, a little bit similar to that in some ways. and that was Cabral, who we sold to Boca Juniors. Now, this guy was actually on loan at Boca anyway, and his contract was running out in the summer next year, and he was a player who didn't want to sign a new deal. He was quite content on loan at Boca, and I was quite pleasantly surprised when I offered him out for £5 million, and Boca came in and decided they wanted him. I believe with that £5 million transfer fee, there is a 50% sell-on clause. That's something that we have done on quite a few of our transfers, and there are actually a few more that we've done exactly that on too. One of which is Gianluca Rotta. Now, this guy, he's Italian, and he plays the Italy under-21s. You probably don't recognise him. The reason you might not recognise him is because he was actually Australian. He was a player who, I believe I mentioned that I've been looking at him for a long time, and he was playing for the Centre of Excellence in Australia, and he actually got released. I decided just to take a punt on him and bring him in on a free last year. He didn't play a game for us. He didn't really show that many signs of development, but AC Milan decided to pay £5 million for him. I guess that's largely down to the fact he was playing in the Italy under-21s and had switched nationalities from Australian. But no, pretty happy with that. I mean, he's a good player at 19. I don't feel like he's a £5 million player to us. So to just recoup a bit of money and make £5 million out of absolutely nothing, I don't know. I feel like that's something that we can be pretty happy with. There's a few other players in a similar mould to that one, to be fair, who we've sold on, one of which is Maisaya Ono. Now, this guy's gone to PSG, where he's now on loan in Germany at Paderborn. But this guy, like, he's a great player, and I kind of rate him. But at the same time, £5 million is a lot of money to get for a player who you signed for £4 million is a lot of money to get for a player who you signed for £2.5 million and didn't make any appearances. So we've made a little bit of money off him. We, I believe with this transfer, also have a 50% sell-on clause, so even if he doesn't quite make it, the Japanese player at PSG, there's a pretty good chance that we'll make a little bit more money off his future transfer. And, you know, this summer, I have sold a few of the younger players who I brought in who I don't know, I feel like we got bids for younger players who I don't ever think are going to be massive parts of the first team, and so to move them on to make some money while they're still kind of in their teens, it kind of makes sense to everyone involved. Anyway, a few more transfers just real quick before we move on. Jae Chul, the Korean, another player we signed for relatively cheap. You can see we signed him on a free. He was on loan at Dundee in the Scottish Premiership last year. He's moved on for £2 million to IFK Gothenburg. The other transfers, just real quick, I'm not going to click on all these player profiles, but Gennari and Salas, both going to Gibraltar Lions. I will just quickly look at these because they're quite significant moves, I guess. Gennari here, the Italian, going to Gibraltar Lions, a player who was one of the three Musketeers you may remember I signed. He never really played in the first team, never made that mark. We have sold him for a little bit of a loss, but at the same time, I kind of feel like selling a player for a loss to Gibraltar Lions I can live with, because despite the fact they are rivals, if I can enhance them at all as a Gibraltarian side going forward, I feel like it's got to be worth it. So to get £1.5 million for him, I was pretty happy about. The other transfer was Salas to Gibraltar Lions, and he was a pretty decent sale if you ask me. Jose Luis Salas, Mexican left-back, very talented player, don't get me wrong, and I have sold him for a quite significant loss, but ultimately he wasn't going to get that much first-team football for us, and so to sell him to Gibraltar Lions, I'm quite content to do that, I guess. Anyway, a few more transfers, which I'm not going to go over the profiles of, but just so you guys are aware, they happened. Touzon left for FC Nantes in France. Touzon, of course, the Gibraltarian forward, been at the club a number of years, smashed goal-scoring records for fun and got something like 150 goals in 2 years. Last year was just completely left out the squad at 31-32. Wanted to get him off the wage budget. Nantes came in, so we let him go. We also let Karavelis, the Greek player we signed from Arsenal a few years ago, go for a really cheap fee. That was more just because he was unhappy, and I didn't really need an extra unhappy player in the team, so we let him go. So all in all, we totaled up to just shy of £43 million on the outs. Quite a few big ones there, but the Nick Austin one certainly making up the majority of the outs. Now we move on to the ins. The first player we have, a bit of a bargain if you ask me, Camilo Castano. Now this guy is a Colombian 18-year-old centre-back, and he comes from, Colombia. You can see he plays at Atletico Nacional, who I believe we've signed a few players off in the past. We have had our fair share of kind of Uruguayans, Colombians, Argentines, Brazilians. Really, the South America flair in our team is very much real, and with Camilo here, I think he's got some potential. He's 18, very good in the air, which I like. we just need to work on his pace a little bit and his core defensive attributes. But, I mean, he's going to be turning 19 fairly soon. He's played a lot of international games at under 20s for Colombia. And I'm hoping he can develop in our team. And he is a player who we are going to look towards to make appearances in the side when we do need to rotate our defence around. Anyway, the defensive kind of strengthening is really a common theme this year. And we made another transfer, and that was Walter Palermo, who we signed from Banfield in Argentina. Now, this guy I really like. He looks like he's going to be a good, talented fullback for the future. 20 years old. You can see he plays a lot for the under-20s in Argentina. Very good mentals, quite like that. Good defensively as well. A very kind of defensive fullback in a lot of ways. You'll see his media description is centre-back because he can also play centre-back. To have a player who can play both left-back and centre-back is, of course, very, very useful indeed. However, I don't see him as much as of a centre-back just because of his lack of a presence in the air. You can see there, 10 jumping reach. It's just simply not really good enough, I don't think, in my opinion, for a centre-back. However, he's a very talented player. I'm hoping he can develop a little bit. And who knows, he could be a kind of player who we do kind of develop, perhaps, into a centre defensive mid, just because he looks like he could be a very good player in that area of the park. Anyway, the next player we brought in, the second biggest transfer of the window, Lamas. And this guy joined us from Barcelona. Now, he was transfer listed, and he is a centre defensive mid, centre attacking mid. He can play everywhere. That's one of the reasons I bought this guy. You can see he's actually out at the moment for 4 to 5 weeks for a lower back stress fracture, which is a little bit of a shame. But I really like the look of this guy. I've kind of signed him primarily, I think, to be a good kind of just backup option everywhere. He is on very big money, and he is earning a lot of money, and he is considered a first-team player in terms of his contract. He's signed for 4 years with us. He probably will start a lot of games. I'm not quite sure where he quite fits into my plans, but because of how flexible he is, he's the kind of player who he allows... Basically, if we get an injury in any position, we can just shift him around. And it's a bit like a Rubik's Cube, basically, our squad. And he is kind of the key piece. Because if you had a Rubik's Cube, hear me out here. If you had a Rubik's Cube and one of the little squares on it was like a rainbow colour and could represent any colour you want to match up the sides, that's what Lamas is. He is the rainbow Rubik's Cube. I don't know where this is going. Basically, very resourceful, very useful player. Anyway, the next player we have is Mohamed Sarr, joining us from Central African. It's a Senegalese team. Can't say I've ever heard of them. This was a player who I've just found when I was going through the national teams. He didn't actually get a cap for Senegal when he got called up, but he's a very good player. He's a very good player. He has good kind of physicals, some good mentals, good kind of technicals, really. They're quite well-rounded. He's 19. We signed him for £2,000. He's a punt. You know, he's the kind of player who probably will never play first-team football for us. But I very much signed him with the intention of kind of moving him on, hopefully for some money in the near future. Anyway, the next transfer we have, the big transfer of the window. It was Gilvan from Atletico Mineiro in Brazil. And this Brazilian player, not the only Brazilian we actually signed in the transfer window, but perhaps the most exciting. This guy looks like he's going to be an absolutely incredible deep line playmaker. He's 20 years old. Got plenty of potential ability as well to improve, which really excites me. He's a determined individual, possesses really good pace. He can play centre mid and centre attacking mid. And I'm just excited by him. I think, you know, £8.5 million, it's not a cheap fee to pay for him, but he's a very exciting talent. You can see he's made some appearances for the Brazilian under-20 squad. I'm quite excited to see what he can develop into at the club. Yeah, definitely want to keep an eye on. And we broke the bank to bring him in terms of the transfer fee, but I think it's going to be money well spent long term. Anyway, the next player we brought in, Andy McLean, very much a punt, a bit like Sarr in a lot of ways. He kind of came to my attention because he was in the Northern Ireland international side. Good mental, good defensively, not great in the air. We signed him on a free. He's a signing who will sit in our reserves and hopefully we can turn a profit on him in the future. And with the last 3 players, 3 fairly hefty deals. The first one here, Francisco Salcedo, a Mexican goalkeeper, a really exciting goalkeeper at that as well. You can see professional personality. He's not the tallest player in the world. I think he stands at about 180 centimetres, which is about 6 foot. But the 19-year-old Mexican, he joins us from Pumas Premier, who I believe we signed a player from in the past. Maybe last year, was it Salas who we signed from there? No, that was Africa Premier. I apologise to my Mexican viewers right there for getting Pumas and America muddled up. But regardless, another good young Mexican, found him through the under-20s side. Looks like he could be a very good player for the future. £5 million is not a cheap fee to bring him in for, but with, of course, Young really developing into a great player. Romero was our backup to him, and Romero, for all kind of the work he's done, he's he's not a great goalkeeper. And I wanted a young kind of replacement, so he's the guy who's going to kind of be our backup goalkeeper, but at 19, I'm hoping he can develop into a first choice over the next 4 or 5 years. Anyway, the next player we have, this is going to get confusing now. We have Graphite. Some people will be like, Jack, you have a Graphite. I do have a Graphite, and he plays right back. This is the left back Graphite. We will just quickly compare these two guys. For the sakes of the narrative, these guys are now going to be considered brothers. They are the Fabio and... what was the other one called? Fabio and Raphael of 2031. These two guys, there's 2 years between them. One's a left back, one's a right back. But the new signing Graphite, the left back, very excited about him. 23 years old, Brazilian, signed for a fairly hefty fee. But he looks like he could be a great attacking fullback. He possesses absolutely terrifying pace. Defensively, he is a very, very kind of competent player. And like a few of these players, I'm just excited to get him in the team. We've signed a lot of defenders this year. And there's going to be a lot of competition in the defence, which I think is something that we've been lacking. But for the most part, a lot of these players are going to come in as either backups or long-term replacements, I feel like. Anyway, the last transfer we brought in was Jose. The reason I brought him in was really because I was looking for a backup striker who I could sign for a relatively cheap fee, who was kind of going to be not necessarily a replacement for Nick Austin, but someone who would fill his shoes in a lot of ways. And I feel like Jose does that for us. He's not great in the air in terms of his jumping, but when it comes to his heading, he's very kind of, I guess, coherent. You can see he has good finishing, good composure, great off the ball. Physically, very talented physically. He's 23 years old. If we just compare him to Nick Austin real quick here, he's not kind of worse than Nick Austin, I would say. They're slightly different in a lot of ways. He's not quite got the same pace as Nick. But considering Nick Austin is a £17.5 million striker and Jose comes in for a fraction of the price, coming in at £3.7 million, I feel like that's a good bit of business, really. Either way, those are the transfers. I feel like I've talked quite a lot through them, but I like to kind of go into all the detail I can. And to be honest, I'm pretty happy with the players we have signed here. If we look at our team, we're going to try something different for today's game. And what we're going to try going into this game against Porto is playing the 4-2-3-1. We have got a few injuries to centre mids, one of which is Lamas, who, of course, I mentioned can just play everywhere. Joe Bouchard also out with a slip disc for up to another 2 months, which is a little bit of a shame. So we're going to try something different. I don't feel like we've got quite enough centre mids due to the injuries to confidently play the kind of narrow 4-3-1-2. As a result, we are going to be switching to this 4-2-3-1, which is a system we've used a few times. When we look at the player kind of competence, that's not the right word. What is the word I'm looking for? Suitability, that's the word. You can see that a lot of the players are really well suited to their role, so I'm hoping they're going to do a good job for us here. Anyway, just a quick look at our Champions League group before we get into the game. Of course, we are playing Porto today. The other teams in our group, however, AC Milan and Newcastle United. Now, Newcastle United, the lowest seed in the group, not going to be an easy team to play. AC Milan, we've met them before, we know what they're capable of. And Porto, an interesting one, and well, we're going to see how we match up against them in this first game today, which is actually going to be away from home. So, a little bit of a challenge for us going across to Portugal. Not a particularly long journey, but I'm hoping we can put in a good performance nevertheless. In terms of our team, I noticed a few players perhaps a little bit low on condition, still above 90, so we're still going to start them today. In terms of the team, we're going to go with Young in goal, the Swedish goalkeeper. I mean, what a man this guy is. He is really, he has stepped up over the years. He really has improved, and he's kind of, he maybe has tailed off a little bit over the summer, but at 27, still, you know, a very good player. He has been quite unfortunate in terms of he actually has suffered a few different injuries. He sprained an ankle and then sprained a wrist in his first game back. He is back, however, for this game, so that is a bit of a relief right there. At left back, we go with the new player on the block, Graphite number L. No, that's not a number. Number 2. I feel like I should call one L Graphite and one R Graphite, so we know which plays on the left and which plays on the right. But he starts for us today. Of course, if you look here, Graphite on the right. He's currently out with an injury, still not fully fit, so unfortunately he won't start alongside his brother. Anyway, in the centre of defence we go with Mustafa, a player who's actually tailed it off just a little bit over the summer. Still a very good player, the Egyptian. I'm hoping with regular first-team football he's going to be back at his best in the very near future. Alongside him we go with Frigier, nothing new there. The partnership in the centre-back position, relatively unchanged despite perhaps some new additions in the side. Right back, we're going to go with Villalba. This guy this year going to be a bit more of a resource player for us. In the last few years, he's been our first choice left back. We now have Graphite who's come in and Palermo. I see him taking a little bit of a step aside in terms of how often I guess he features in the first team, but regardless, a good player for us. In the centre of midfield, we go with JJ and Gilvan, of course, the new deep line playmaker, perhaps with a point to prove there. Out on the left, we go with Paul Smith. Vergara starts in centre, attacking mid, hoping he can do a great job for us there. Out on the right, we go with Pereira, last year's kind of team of the year player of the year. He was in everything. He was definitely the surprise package last year. I'm hoping he can put in a good performance today for us. And up front for today's game, we're going to start with Mosca up top, a player who he ended the season with an injury. He's bounced back strong. You can see he's got 7 goals so far in 4 Champions League games. I didn't talk about how he got to the group stage, just to quickly recap that. We beat Maribor 8-0 on aggregate, and then Victoria Plzen 6-0 on aggregate. It was comfortable, and it was very comprehensive, the victories themselves. Anyway, let's get into this game. We're playing Porto. We're going to be kind of, I don't want to say we're risking things, but playing the 4-2-3-1, you know, it's a bit of a brave decision. We'll see how kind of it goes for us. I'm hoping that it's going to go well. I mean, let's see what our team can do here. You know, it's a tough group this year in the Champions League. We are the 3rd seed still. Newcastle are going to be a bit of an intriguing team because this is their first time they've played in the Champions League in this save. A few years ago we had Hull in the Champions League, although they weren't in our groups. There has been some surprising teams there, and I don't really want to underestimate them. So they're certainly going to be a team to be, I guess, wary of. But particularly AC Milan and Porto, I mean, they're going to be 2 teams who I don't say will necessarily struggle against, but I think that they're going to be teams who are going to be challenges, and well, we need to defend set piece as well. Porto hitting the crossbar there to start the game. A bit of a warning shot. 20 minutes gone, the first chance, and well, certainly there with a chance. Headed away nicely. Porto still on the attack though. They have edge possession. Young this time does collect the ball nicely. 50-50 possession actually, and now we're starting to get a little bit more on it. That said, Porto really the team doing everything when they have the ball. We have not had enough shots in this game, and well, it's Porto bringing it forward. That said, Frigier, nice interception. Pereira up to Vergara. Can the Argentine make something happen? He thread through Mosca. Can Mosca finish it? Tight angle into the side netting. It was a good opportunity there for the Brazilian up front. Perhaps took it a little bit wide. You wanted him to cut inside. Unfortunately, that option was kind of prevented, I guess, by the way the Porto defence shifted over. And, well, you'd have to say defended quite well. 40 minutes gone though. It's a tight game. Porto having a lot more shots and chances, but in truth, they've not had enough clear-cut chances. Maybe though before half-time they'll have a chance. Dominguez wins the header. Villalba collects the ball back to Young, who will clear it up to Mosca, who has a little bit of space to take the ball down here. Now Villalba running off him, dispossessed, and well, not a lot of time in the half. It'd be disastrous for either team to concede now, and it is going to be Porto bringing the ball forward here. Cerny, can he whip in the ball? He cuts inside, has an effort. It goes way wide of the mark in the end. It would have been some goal if he'd managed to bury that. At half-time, it's going to be 0-0 here. I'm going to tell the players I'm far from pleased. I want to get them fired up in this game. We are going to have perhaps a little bit of a concern when it comes to player fitness towards the end of this game. That said, you know, I'm hoping that we can, you know, continue, I guess, to perform to the standard we are right now. Mosca's not had the best game up front for us. I'm going to make quite an early change, I think, in this half. And I'm actually going to bring in... Do I want to bring in Helik? Or do I want to bring in Elmo? Or do I want to bring in Mora? That's the question. Who do I want to bring in? Who do I want... Gilvan's had a bit of a nightmare as well. Unfortunately, Bouchard's out injured, so we're kind of limited on the centre mid position. So I don't think we're going to make a change just yet. But as the game goes on, particularly if we concede, we might be forced into making that change. But I don't know, 60 minutes gone here. I probably should be weighing up making a change. Actually, I think we're going to do it. I'm going to bring in Helik, I think, to play up top for us. I think Gilvan's also struggled in this game, so I'm going to move Vergara back into deep line playmaker and bring Mora on as kind of a bit of a centre attacking mid for us. You know, get some fresh legs on in the final third. Mora, not necessarily a really pacey player, but an agile player, a nimble player, and I think he's capable of creating some space perhaps for us in the final third. To be fair, like 0-0, I don't want to say I'd be happy with it, but I'd certainly... It could be worse. You know, if we could get a point from this game away from home, that'd be good. That said, set piece gets whipped in here. Cleared away by as far as Romario. Nice block there, though. Now can we break Graphite up to Helik? The new man on the block, new Graphite, the left back. Nice breaking down there. Now Vergara bringing the ball forward. Can he thread it to Helik? He can. Mora's there, and Mora scores. Helik and Mora linking up, the two subs making an impact for us. Mora, he's cut his beautiful hair off. What has he done? Either way, it's 1-0 here, and the dreadlocks have gone for Mora, and the deadlock has been broken here for, well, Apex. It's 1-0. Porto hit on the break quite nicely. Graphite involved in the build-up. Vergara, I mean, he's meant to be playing as a deep line playmaker. He's gone walkies there, but I'm not going to complain. Helik involved in the build-up, doing a good job laying it up to Mora, who, well, buries it home, and, well, we're now 1-0 up away from home here against Porto. This would be a really good result if we could see this out. You'd have to say some players struggling for fitness. You know, maybe I should be making some changes. We only have the one sub left, though. If we could get a second goal now, that'd be delightful. Helik bringing the ball forward, relatively unopposed. Now Vergara, thread through Paul Smith. Paul Smith hits the post. Can Mora be there for the header? He can't. And it's going to be cleared away by Porto. What a chance that was to double the lead here. Frigier, I thought he committed the foul there. It's actually been given offside. I'm going to make a change. Mustafa, not had the best game. He's also on a booking. I'm going to bring in Walter Palermo for the last 17 minutes. Perhaps a little bit of a risk to take off Mustafa, one of our best players in the year. Certainly a big asset when it comes to defending set pieces. But he is struggling. He is on a yellow card. Walter Palermo, the Argentine, going to come into the side. 5 minutes left in this game. We have got another highlight. Squeaky bum time, perhaps, although it's us bringing the ball forward here. Helic to Vergara. Helic again. JJ threads it out wide to Paul Smith. Intercepted now. And now Porto bring the ball forward. One ball over the top. They might be clean through here. Nanelli out on the right. Hits it Young. What a save that is. It was hit with, venomous power at Young. And he's tipped it over really, really nicely. It wasn't a clear-cut chance, and the chance might still be alive. Porto whipping the ball into the box this time, though. Vishalba going to bring the ball forward for us. Now can we hit them on the break? Probably not. Pereira dispossessed. Now with Vergara. I feel like this is a pointless highlight. It is a pointless highlight, although 2 minutes left of the game. Porto bringing the ball forward again. They are really having a barrage of attacks and shots on our goal. That said, we're on the break here. They're committing men forward. Helic tries to thread through the ball, intercepted, but JJ out to Graphite, the left back. Paul Smith, Vergara, Mora. This is nice first time passing. That said, giving the ball away here. Now Porto just punting the ball forward, really, smashing it up, trying to hit us on the break. They might have a chance here. Young, what a save. What a block that is by whoever number 4 is. The ball goes sailing over. JJ, you have just bailed us out, my son. But there's another chance. I can't be dealing with this. Some of my players are dead on the pitch here. Vergara can't get there first. And now Porto on the attack again. Nanelli. Oh my gosh. Make it stop. They hit it wide. This has been a tense game. There's a minute and a half left and they're still having chances. How are we still in this game? How are we still ahead? Young just saves it again. I'm losing my mind. Porto have had 22 shots. I feel like half of them have come in the last 10 minutes. There's 50 seconds left. If we can hold on for this, this would be one of the most ridiculous defensive displays I've ever seen at the end of a game. Porto haven't even had that many clear-cut chances. They've just been having shot after shot after shot, and Young has made some incredible saves for us. I mean, we've blocked it. There's a corner now. 20 seconds into or over extra time. The ball's cleared. It is all over. It's 1-0. That is a fantastic result for us. Frigier getting the man of the match with an 8.5. I mean, Young got an 8.2. What a defensive display that was. No one gave us a chance in that game. Porto, the number 2 seeds in the group. We get a win. AC Milan and Newcastle drawing, and we top the group by 2 points. And I feel out of breath after that game. That was a horrible one to watch. We've somehow managed to hold on ahead. And, I mean, we get £1 million for that. Frigier on form. I mean, what a performance that is. If we can perform like that defensively, then we'll make it out of this group, no problem. Either way, I do hope you guys enjoyed this opening episode. Lots of transfers to go through. I do feel like our squad is defensively a lot stronger now than it was before. We have a lot more options when it comes to defensively. I still feel like there's a little bit of a question mark over the centre mid position, but that's something we can perhaps look to address in January. I don't think that's further helped by perhaps the amount of injuries we've got. Of course, we've got Taques out on loan as well in Brazil. When he comes back, he also gives us an option in the centre mid position. So I feel like it's kind of a temporary problem, this lack of centre mids. And, with Bouchard out for a little while, and Lamas also out for a few weeks yet. We've got a little bit longer to hold on, perhaps, with that issue. Either way, next time around, it will be the AC Milan and Newcastle games. Hopefully, I'll see you guys for those. As always, if you have enjoyed this video, please do smash the like button. If you've got any comments, leave them down below. And other than that, it is me, Jack, and I will talk to you guys in a bit. I'm out.